I'm recording this on the first lunation cycle of 2026 to fully embrace the Capricornian grounded, common sense energy of the sea goat as we're going to need it. If you recall, I referred to 2025 as the year of the showdown. Well, come February, when the fire horse ignites 2026, we'll be looking at a huge alchemical shift I'd like to think will manifest as the year of emancipation. In this video, I'll be breaking down how these celestial gear shifts might present terrestrially, first at a mundane level and then scaling down to the individual. As always, I'm basing my analysis on planetary synodic cycles, that is to say, a planet's orbit around the sun, as seen from an earthbound perspective. This is another means by which astrologers gauge a planet's strength of influence. So let's begin with Pluto, where all things begin and end. Of the transpersonal planets, Pluto is the slowest and the furthest. When it changes signs, we can expect significant power shifts on the global stage. Pluto ingressed into Aquarius for a new 19-year cycle as of November 19th, 2024. The last time he was in this sign was in 1778. Historically, this period witnessed revolutions in both the Old World and the New. Aquarius is the sign of the people, as it opposes Leo, the place of monarchies and rulers. Civil unrest and populist uprisings will escalate dramatically. This will be even more evident when the lunar nodes move into the Leo-Aquarius axis end of July and park there for 2 years. The North Node, also known as the Dragon's Head, will be in Aquarius, which translates into a karmic recoding of the collective, for which there may not be a historical precedence. This rewrite kicks into high gear with eclipses falling into these signs. Again, referring to alchemical processes, each lunar eclipse is an albedo phase, and each solar eclipse is citrinitas, or yellowing. A potential expression of this at the mundane level is a rebalancing through a transfer of wealth. Pluto, Hades, is the god of the underworld who reveals what has been hidden or buried. Those who have engaged in clandestine operations and dealings done in the dead of night will have the spotlight shining on their activities, and exposure may lead to mass resignations. Think House of Cards. This will be further amplified by the first eclipse of 2026 on February 17th in, you guessed it, Aquarius. This is an annular solar eclipse, the sun representing leadership. So as of this date, a reset with global implications is fully in the works. Aquarius also puts an emphasis on electronics and all things digital. Keep an eye on the technocratic brotherhood, who will be jockeying for position as empires collapse and the AI influence moves from an interesting phenomenon to a force humanity must address when it comes to the future of our species. To add a little more spice to the mix, you can expect a lot more dialogue regarding aliens. Pluto serves as the cosmic gatekeeper between death and rebirth. A parade of personal planets will be moving through the sign of the water bearer, benchmarking the transition into the Aquarian age. By January 23rd, we will have a superstellium in Aquarius. Venus, followed by Mercury and Mars, will all be bending the knee to the god of the underworld, seeking safe passage with both luminaries offering guidance, and we will all be impacted dramatically. In alchemical terms, this is the ultimate Nigredo moment. Expect serious changes in relationships, finances, commerce, setting of goals, and how we choose to move forward. That is to say, the heart, the head, and the will are all having a powwow with the great transformer beneath the horizon line. None of the personal planets are visible in the sky again until early March. What does that mean? Well, to put it simply, if you haven't done the appropriate shadow work in these areas of your life, Pluto will demand you do so. Take a moment to pause and integrate what I've just shared, as we've only covered the first month of 2026, and things will accelerate rapidly with the third blood moon in 2 years happening on March 3rd in Virgo. This full lunar eclipse will last over an hour and is likely to stir things up in the Middle East. Meanwhile, my advice to all individuals is to take special care of your nervous system and gut health during this quiet time of the winter months. Moving on to Neptune, who has been in his ruling sign of Pisces over the last 14 years. The god of oceans is jumping into the frying pan on January 27th, when he ingresses into the sign of Aries right after the planetary precession in Aquarius I just described. The last time Neptune was in the cardinal fire sign was in 1862, during which time America experienced a civil war and nationalism was rising in Germany and Italy. Echoes of this dynamic will be playing out again on the world stage. Bear in mind, however, as I've mentioned in previous videos, we have moved into a new 200-year cycle of air. So things won't play out in the same way they did when we were in an Earth-dominant elemental cycle. Conflicts are not likely to play out kinetically. It will be made manifest through cyber warfare and technologies that rely on sound and electricity. Aries is ruled by Mars, the god of war, and any planet in his playground is going to contend with that category of interaction. We had mass migrations over the last 14 years that's not likely to continue since Mars as a malefic cuts, and that pipeline will be severed. Speaking of pipelines, Neptune rules oil and gas, so aggressive claims over these resources will be a big factor in geopolitics over at least the next 2 years. The big blue ice giant also reigns over religion and spirituality. All things faith-related are going to be in for a movement into new directions as the old institutions are dissolved and reconfigured. The same can be said of entertainment, particularly anything cinema-related. Earth changes are also part of this signature movement from water to fire. And if that isn't enough Brave New World for you, the great gas giant Saturn joins Neptune in Aries on February 5th. These two behemoth archetypes have been dancing together for a while now, but we'll be looking at a tango as opposed to a waltz in the next 2 years. The greater malefic will attempt to restrict and limit all in its path, while Neptune continues to dissolve efforts to contain and confine, but this time in fire, not water. This will become evident to everyone when territorial boundaries are rewritten and new alliances are formed as a consequence. It will take place at a much faster pace, with considerable push-pull as Aries is a cardinal fire. The ram doesn't negotiate, it headbutts. Turning our gaze eastward, that solar eclipse on February 17th heralds in the fire horse of the Chinese zodiac. Incendiary is not an exaggeration when it comes to defining the next 12 months once that horse bursts out of the gate in February. Think back to 1966 as a point of reference. The vortex in the fixed air sign of Aquarius will make its way into Aries in April on the 17th. Both luminaries, as well as Mercury and Mars, will be joining Saturn and Neptune in Mars's domain. Remember what I said about Aries. If Neptune represents the church, then Saturn represents the state, and both of these pillars will be melted and reforged through quicksilver and iron. This is known as the rubedo phase of the great alchemical process. Chiron, the wounded healer who has been parked in this sign since February 2019, will be bearing witness to this transformation as we, the individuals, take final steps to heal ourselves when it comes to our sense of self-worth, identity, and assertion of will. Hopefully you're still with me, maybe nursing a whiskey sour to take the edge off at this point. The thing to remember, especially for the remainder of this decade, is the cosmos always looks to achieve balance. That principle applies to planetary motion as it does to all else in our reality. Cue the benefics. While the power structures we knew are being smelted into a new configuration in April, Venus has pirouetted out of the cauldron unscathed, as she was the first to enter Aries on March 7th and then settle into her ruling sign of Taurus on the 31st. There she will remain in the feminine fixed earth sign as Aphrodite, evening star. Glorious Persephone awakens the earth through the gentle breezes and birdsong of spring. Meanwhile, Jupiter, planet of growth, expansion, knowledge, and wealth, is catching the waves in its exalted sign of Cancer. This is the moon's domain, where the themes of home, family, nurturing, and intuition come into play. Luna rules silver. If you've been paying attention to precious metals trading, you will be fully aware that the value of silver is skyrocketing and will continue to do so while Jupiter remains in the sign of the Crab until midsummer. The moon also represents the divine feminine. Perhaps this rise in market value for silver is in fact the reflection of a renewed appreciation for the sacred goddess in all her forms. Getting back to the alchemical narrative, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that on January 6th, we had a rare dual cazimi of Venus and Mars. That is to say, they were flanking the sun and were both rebirthed in the sun's rays. If this isn't a celestial hierosgamos, then I don't know what is. Seriously, you cannot make this up. 2026 opened with a sacred wedding, full embodiment of the Christos Sophia through integration of the masculine feminine, conscious unconscious, within the self. As a Jungian psychologist, I would venture to say this is the greatest opportunity our species is being offered to achieve wholeness. Some of you might be saying, wait a minute, what about Uranus? I saved him for last because he is the Great Awakener. When he bounces into Gemini April 26th, he will be shaking things up in the sign of the Twins until 2033. We know what it looked like in 1941, but this is a different landscape. We could see internet outages, innovations in communication, revamping of the educational system, and our currency. Remember, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the god of trade and communication. Money is actually an energetic exchange. We may decide that the way we choose to conduct these transactions will take on an entirely new form. Speaking of Mercury, the messenger of the gods, was still presenting his Promethean face, the forward-thinking innovator, when 2026 kicked in. On January 21st, the planet closest to the sun went cazimi, and in his inward turning, the contemplative, Epimethean face is presented in late February. This is playing out in the sign of Pisces, where Mercury will retrograde on the 25th. One last chance to review your thinking patterns and how they might need to be adjusted. Look to your own natal chart and the house Pisces occupies to determine the area of focus for these revisions. There are two more Mercury retrogrades playing out in 2026. One in Cancer on June 29th, precisely where Jupiter has been working his magic, and one in Scorpio, right after Venus in November. The heart and the head get a reset in the fall. With all this said and done, I'd like to take this moment to step into the realm of medical astrology. It would be advantageous for everyone to pay extra attention to your nervous system this year. New neural circuits are being established at a speed which will blow your hair back come the middle of 2026. So most people will find themselves way out of their respective comfort zones. You'll feel this a lot less intensely if you have a mutable ascendant or dominance of air in your birth chart, since this is familiar terrain for you. Regardless, make the time to isolate yourself. Breathe. Partake in things that bring you joy and peace of mind. Gravitate towards positive people. Unplug from the internet at least one day a week. Be in nature and keep your loved ones close. The plant medicine that applies here across the board is valerian root or lavender, chamomile, and my favorite, catnip. All of these serve as nervine supports. But as always, be sure to consult with your medical practitioner, especially if you are on medication, before you incorporate any of these remedies in your health restoration and maintenance routines. In closing, I would leave you with this caution. As Jack Parsons said, freedom is a two-edged sword. To fully embody the Aquarian age and drink of those celestial waters, we must keep the big picture foremost in our minds. Humanity is purging, purifying, and propagating a magnificent new playground, provided we take responsibility for our thoughts, feelings, and actions. When you get triggered by something, ask yourself, why? And if it points to underlying fears you haven't faced yet, now is the time. In keeping with these massive multiple shifts from this point forwards, I will be providing my astrological reviews on my Substack channel. So I'll be amalgamating everything I'm doing in one place. The link will be provided in the description below. Please join me there and stay frosty, my friends.